Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, National President Emma Rose and Secretary General Daniel Yedebi, and conference delegates, friends. It is a great honor to be here among you today. Allow me first to thank the National Education Union for extending the invitation to the Palestinian ambassador to address your esteemed conference, in itself a statement of solidarity and support. And Emma, we very much appreciate and value your support. And allow me to acknowledge the presence of a good friend and brother of ours, Mr. Saed Izriqat, and his colleagues at the Palestine General Union of Teachers, Anan as well, and our union here, who have come to take part in your conference. And this is not the first participation, I take it, it's every year. And it is a testament of the relationship, the historic relationship between our unions, trade unions, and yours. And since the NEU has long been a staunch supporter of Palestine. Of course, it has, its membership is knowledgeable. They are the teachers of this country, and you all possess a clear moral clarity. So it is no surprise that you have been the strongest supporter of Palestine historically. And I see here many old friends. I don't know how old it goes back, 20 years, 25 years, including our very good friend Louise Reagan, who's now the chair of the PSC. And please give her a big round of applause. And I must say, Bernard Reagan here, who I met 25 years ago, who was more than 25 years ago. The three of us were 3 years old then, right? But it tells you of the story of solidarity of your union with Palestine. There is a long and proud history of British trade union solidarity with the Palestinian people. One, I am inspired to say, continues unabated to this day. The first twinning between a Palestinian and a British city came as far back as 1980, between Nablus and Dundee, at the behest of trade unions. I must say, Scottish trade unions. Today, unions are strongly represented in the countless demonstrations up and down the country that have called for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and solidarity with our quest to finally be liberated on our own land. And here I'd like to also acknowledge the presence of both the chair of PSC and the director of PSC, that is Ben Jamal, and the work over the last few months of bringing hundreds of thousands of people in that show of real solidarity with the Palestinian people. Thank you, Ben, for all that you have been doing. These kinds of people-to-people, trade union to trade union, community to community relations, contacts, create real bonds, my friends, sustainable bonds. Twinship goes even beyond friendship. It's shared destiny, it's shared experiences. And it's on all levels and many levels, not least in deepening relations and promoting mutual understanding. To be talking today to the biggest education union in Europe also holds particular resonance. Education has been a primary means by which the Palestinian people have been able to recover, to withstand, to survive, to stay resilient in the face of repeated Israeli-made catastrophes. From the ethnic cleansing of 1948, the first Nakba, to the military occupation of 1967, to the colonial expansion, the besiegments, the apartheid rule, all the way to today's abhorrent and ongoing genocide in Gaza, I will make a strong wager that not a single Palestinian has grown up anywhere in the world without hearing this three-word phrase from our parents over and over again. These three words are education, education, education. This phrase my friends, drilled into our minds from a young age. And it is the reason why we enjoy one of the highest literacy rates in the world and one of the highest rates of per capita PhD degree holders worldwide. We are, in fact, known as the best educated refugee population in the world. I should know. I was born in a refugee camp in Rafah, in Gaza's south. I'm sure all of you know Rafah by now. I am the son of the first Nakba, the education that was provided there by UNRWA, I must say, set me on a road that would eventually take me to Birzeit University in the West Bank, then to the London School of Economics here, and to Harvard in the US. I owe everything to my society, my people, who have gone through the first Nakba, who embraced us, and who invested every little they had in our education. And the lesson it learned, my community, the lesson that we learned collectively from the Nakba, to putting human capital first and foremost. And I owe much to UNRWA, I must say. It is worth bearing in mind that when you hear Israel level unproven allegations against UNRWA staff, and when you see your own government stop funding for UNRWA based on these unproven allegations, that UNRWA has a main task, that is education and health, of course. All of these explain why Israel is so keen to targeting UNRWA and our education institutions. After all, an occupied people is so much easier to dominate if it is also uneducated, unhealthy, and unaware of its rights. So, my friends, the situation today in Gaza, as I am sure you are aware, is catastrophic. Nearly 33,000 people, mostly women and children, have been murdered, slaughtered. More than 75,000 have been maimed. Nearly 30 Palestinian children in Gaza have died of starvation or disease as a result of malnutrition. In the 21st century, Israel has imposed a famine on Gaza and is preventing essential humanitarian supplies from reaching the people in need. Indeed, as we saw this Monday, it is doing more than just that. It is directly targeting aid workers, bringing those essential supplies, including the 7 international aid workers who were murdered while bringing food from World Central Kitchen, among them 3 noble British citizens. Nearly 200 aid workers have been killed in the past 6 months, including 176 UN staff. This is the highest number of aid workers killed in any comparable conflict since record began. It is the highest number of journalists killed since record began. It is the highest number of doctors killed since record began. It is the highest number of children killed in any given conflict since record began. Your government The UK government have not condemned even the murder of 33,000 people, calling for Israel to investigate its own crime. It did not even condemn the murder of the 3 citizens so far, yet alone calling for accountability. Not a day goes by without another moral outrage. Not a day goes by without our humanity being dented. 85% of the population in Gaza has been forcibly displaced. 85%. And are living in camps, in UN shelters, in hospitals, courtyards, anywhere they can find little safety. There has been the near total annihilation of Gaza's civil infrastructure, from housing and hospitals to businesses and factories. The list is endless. The list should shock you, should shock every and each one of us. It is shocking to the core. It is more than shocking. It is genocidal. There is a reason Israel is currently on trial for the crime of genocide at the International Court of Justice, officially on trial. And the International Court of Justice is the highest court of the globe. There is a reason why 800 genocide scholars warned of the risks of genocide as far back as October last year, 15th of October. And as part of this genocide, this drive to render Gaza unlivable, this drive to render Gaza lifeless, Israel has been engaged in what scholars have termed as educide. Educide. That is the wholesale targeting of Gaza's education sector. Staff, teachers, your fellow teachers, campuses, libraries, even the Ministry of Education building itself. 94%, I should have said 94 university professors have been murdered so far in the last 6 months. 94. Every single one of Gaza's 12 universities, every single one of them, have been destroyed, either partially or totally. The Israeli military even posted a video of its own soldiers demolishing Al-Isra University in a controlled explosion. Let me explain what that means. It means they went inside the university, laid down mines, retreated, and blew it up. And they filmed that with a glee. One of the war crimes that is documented by the war criminals themselves. And it is not just higher education institutes. According to the United Nations, a total of 368 schools have been partially or totally destroyed. That amounts to more than 75% of Gaza's schooling buildings. 75%. That number includes 168 schools that were struck directly by Israeli missiles. Of course, all of Gaza's 625,000 school children are going without an education and have gone without an education for the past 6 months. Schools that have avoided extensive damage now serve as shelters for the 1.9 million homeless, displaced, forcibly so. Of course, there have been efforts to keep schooling going by us, by our community. But these are voluntary efforts in camps or displaced people with little by way of educational materials and entirely dependent on the efforts of the displaced themselves. And this all comes, let me remind us, after 17 years of an Israeli-imposed blockade on Gaza, including periodic episodes of military aggressions that had already taken a toll on the education sector and on Gaza as a whole. Some scholars say this extensive damage in our education sector and other sectors will take 10 to 20 years to recover from. What does that mean? It means we are potentially facing a lost generation, a generation of whom education will be just a distant dream. It will have a knock-on effects on everything, including our economy. It will have consequences for the trauma care that is so deeply needed just now. In 2020, a study found that half of Gaza's children suffered symptoms of PTSD, post-trauma stress disorder. Half. That was already 4 years ago. And that rate will have skyrocketed by now. And scholars and schoolings, as you all know, schools, teachers, schooling is an essential, central part of any recovery. Mental recovery, especially for children. They offer more than just education. They socialize in schools. It's about their friends. They offer pastoral care, sports, extracurriculum activities, all vital in the mental health and the recovery from trauma and in the general development of a child, as you all know and invest in. Schooling, perhaps most crucially, also gives hope for the future. A future that is so uncertain for all of our people in Gaza and everywhere else, all over Palestine. The situation, my friends, is indeed devastating. The situation is devastating, but it is what we have to face up. We must face up. And if there is one thing we, the Palestinian people, have in abundance, it is this. We are the most resilient people on earth. We know how to survive. We do know how to survive, how to recover. We've been through it many times before, and we have recovered. We will rise. But this time, we want to make sure it is the last time. It is the last time that our children are mass murdered. The last time our schools are mass destructed. The last time we allow for genocide and ethnic cleansing. It has been going on for a long, long time, 76 years. Enough is enough. And therefore, I assure you, we will recover. And for a century, more than a century, in the modern era at least, we have suffered one occupation after another. This is not the first. For over a century, we have been denied our most basic rights to independence and liberation in a state of our own. For over a century, we have had to recover from shock after shock. In spite of this, we have a 96.4% literacy rate, despite all that happened to us. This is the resilience I'm talking about. And despite all the invaders and the conquerors and the colonizers and the occupiers and the besiegers and the bigots that have come our way, despite all of that, despite the targeting of our education system for years, despite the loss of our material base in 1948 and onward, despite the theft of our land and resources, the subjugation, the suppression of our people, despite all that, we are a nation of scholars. and of poets, of teachers, wonderful teachers like you are, of scientists and engineers, of innovators. Palestinians are represented across the globe, across the world, in universities. I am so inspired, proud as I go around UK universities, US universities, all over the world. And you see the most exceptional professors are those of Palestinian origins. Palestinians also are in major corporations, the CEOs, and young generations, the CEOs of multinational companies. You will find hundreds of them here in London. And even you find Palestinians in NASA, providing new inventions to the world. We have no choice, my friends. This is not a matter of choice. Our parents' voices will always ring in our ears, telling us education, education, education. We are pursuing plans to mitigate this appalling disaster Israel has visited upon us. Plans by the Palestinian national institutions, by the Palestinian government, and of course plans by our education sector, by our civil society. My alma mater in the West Bank, Birzeit University, for instance, is launching a distance learning initiative called the Rekindling Initiative, specifically tailored, targeting our students in Gaza. Every West Bank university, in fact, offers distance learning now, which will become a crucial tool as we seek to restart our academic life in Gaza. The challenges are vast, of course. There is a massive humanitarian disaster that must be met by massive humanitarian assistance. There is a huge rebuilding project to be undertaken to reconstruct schools, hospitals, universities, along, of course, with homes and basic infrastructure. And we cannot even begin to meet these challenges until we first have completed and achieved an immediate and permanent ceasefire. This will come, my friends. A permanent, an immediate and permanent comprehensive ceasefire will come. It will come too late, however. Too late. More than 100,000 people too late, injured and killed. But it will come. Right from the beginning, the vast majority of the British people have supported a ceasefire, as in the first 2 weeks. And we recognize the best that this country has shown, which is its people. From the beginning, all the way to last Saturday, when we saw hundreds of thousands in the streets of London. And this, the power of the people, your power, the power of the unions, have forced, finally, the UK government to vote for an immediate ceasefire at the UN only 2 weeks ago. This, the will of the people will tell in the end. Your will tell. According to the latest poll, only yesterday, YouGov, a clear majority of people in the UK also want an embargo on the sale of weapons to Israel. It is exceedingly hard to see Israel agrees to a ceasefire without real action being taken by its allies, the UK included, to hold it to account. The Israeli government, Israeli officials don't care about statements. They have been hearing many statements, lip service. This is time for action. That means sanctions. That means one thing. Sanctions. It means an arms embargo. Israel has defied international law, international institutions. It has defied even its allies. It has ignored a binding UN Security Council resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire. It has brushed off the International Court of Justice. This cannot continue, my friends. Cannot continue. It must not continue. Our global rules-based order is at stake here. It is facing its biggest existential challenge. Israel is isolated among the community of nations, outside a handful of key allies. I must say the UK, I am afraid, is one of these handful allies. But such blind protection, such complicity in Israel's many war crimes, such continued support despite Israel's obvious contempt for international law must come to an end, my friends. But it must not come to an end, not just for the sake of Palestine and the Palestinians, but it is only about all of us. Must come to an end because of our humanity, because of every and each one of us. Because we must leave for our future generations a better tomorrow, a better future. As our parents after the horrors of the Second World War and our grandparents have done. They left us a system, rules. What happened in the last few months, and I'm concluding here, what happened in the last few months has unmasked many things. Gaza, Palestine has unmasked the hypocrisy, the selectivity, the double standards of some key Western governments. And it has undermined attempts to create a true community of equal nations. That is the dream we have had. Those are our universal values. We came together after what happened in the Second World War to say never again. But never again, not for the few, never again for all of us. That's how the architects of the global order envisages a world of equal nations. Our children and young people in Gaza and across Palestine need more than just aid, my friends. They need hope. Hope for the future. They need a reason to continue educating themselves in spite of the odds stacked against them. And that hope must be political. That hope must be about their rights, their national rights, their sacred rights, their non-negotiable rights. For far too long now, we have been denied these very basic rights. No more. No more. If we are to offer hope for a better future, if we are to ensure that we never again reach this point, the lowest point humanity can reach, the lowest point, an imposed famine on a population that more than 50% of them are children less than 12 years old? Can we go lower? And therefore, this is a moment when we turn this tragedy, this man-made catastrophe, into a momentum for change. Then it is a high time we secured what have always been our struggle: the liberation of our land, the creation of a sovereign independent state of Palestine, with Jerusalem as its capital, the equal application of international law, the Palestinian people being treated equally like all other nations. Equally, they have the right to self-determination, freedom, justice, and return for our refugees to their homes. It is way past time, my friends. It's been a century, and it all started here. You know the history. You know the Balfour Declaration. It's way past time. It is also way past time that we stop treating Israel as if it is somehow exceptional. There is nothing exceptional about Israel except it gets away with murder. It is time that we treated Israel the same as any other country and held accountable like any other country. And you can help, my friends. You can help us rebuild our cherished education system. We need you. You can help us pressing for the immediate reinstatement of the funding for UNRWA. We need you and your support. You can help us making clear to your government that fundamental change must come in British policy. And Israel must be held accountable in order that we not create a future doomed to repeat endlessly the brutality and injustices of the past. I am alarmed, not about only Gaza and Palestine. I'm alarmed whose children are going to be next. When is the next war? And where is the next war? And who is going to take the lesson of the normalization of the mass murder of children? And therefore, this is not just our fight. It's your fight. Your voices matter. They carry weight with your political leaders, and your solidarity matters. They matter not just for the change you can bring to bear, but for this very simple human reason. Your solidarity reminds us. It reminds the 625,000 school children in Gaza. It reminds the 1.9 million homeless Palestinians in Gaza. It reminds the 14 million Palestinians across the occupied territory and indeed across the world that even in this, our darkest moment, we are not alone. We are not alone. And that, my friends, brings the most precious thing we have, which is hope. I hope, and the hope that you give us by the show of solidarity, the show of support, that we are not alone, the hope brings regeneration. Hope brings possibility, potential. Hope brings belief in our humanity. And for the hope you give us, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.